The dining room chandelier glittered like a frozen waterfall, casting fractured light across the mahogany table where my family sat, their faces carved from stone. My mother's voice sliced through the silence, sharp as the diamond on her finger. "Ellie, you're a disgrace to this family." I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth, as my father nodded, his eyes fixed on my sister, Lila, who glowed under their praise like a saint in a Renaissance painting. I was 30, still living in the shadow of my parents' wealth, their expectations a noose I could never quite slip. The Warrens were old money, their fortune built on real estate empires and social connections that stretched across Chicago's elite. I'd grown up in this mansion, surrounded by marble and gold. But tonight, it felt like a mausoleum. Lila, 2 years younger, sat across from me, her perfect smile a mirror of everything I wasn't. "Lila's going to take over the foundation," my father announced, his voice thick with pride. "She's proven herself worthy." The words landed like a slap. Worthy. The implication hung heavy. I wasn't. "Why am I a disgrace?" I asked, my voice trembling but refusing to break. My mother's lips pursed, her gaze flicking to my father as if I'd dared to challenge a sacred decree. "You've squandered every opportunity we've given you," she said. "No ambition, no discipline." Lila, on the other hand, she gestured to my sister, who blushed demurely, her hands folded like a porcelain doll. I wanted to scream, to upend the table and watch the crystal shatter. But I swallowed the rage. This wasn't new. I'd always been the flawed daughter, the one who didn't fit the Warren mold. Growing up, I tried to please them. I'd attended the right schools, worn the right clothes, smiled at the right people. But I was never enough. Lila was the golden child, her every achievement valedictorian, charity galas, a fiancé from a good family paraded like trophies. I, on the other hand, was the artist, the dreamer, the one who dared to want something beyond their world of galas and boardrooms. I'd studied art history, worked at a small gallery, and lived in a modest apartment I paid for myself. To them, that was failure. The dinner dragged on, each bite of filet mignon tasting like ash. My parents recounted Lila's latest triumph, a multi-million-dollar donation she'd secured for their foundation. "She's a visionary," my father said, his eyes gleaming. I pushed my plate away, the clink of porcelain deafening in the silence. "And what am I?" I asked, unable to stop myself. My mother's eyes narrowed. "You're directionless," she said. "You've chosen a life of mediocrity." The word stung, but it was the reason behind it that gutted me. They didn't just disapprove of my choices, they believed I was betraying their legacy because I wasn't like Lila. I excused myself, my chair scraping against the floor. In the hallway, I leaned against the wall, my breath ragged. The family portrait stared back at me, all of us smiling in a moment that never existed. I wanted to hate Lila, but she wasn't the problem. She was as trapped as I was, molded into their perfect puppet. The real issue was the secret I'd uncovered a week ago, the one that explained their obsession with Lila and their disdain for me. It wasn't just about achievements, it was something far uglier. Last week, I'd found a letter in my father's study, tucked inside a locked drawer I'd pried open out of curiosity. It was from a private investigator, dated 20 years ago. The words still burned in my mind, confirmed. "Eleanor is not biologically related to Mr. Warren. I wasn't their daughter. Lila was. And somehow, they'd known all along." The revelation had shattered me. Every criticism, every comparison, every cold glance made sense now. I wasn't just a disappointment, I was an outsider. A secret they'd buried under layers of wealth and pretense. I'd confronted my mother privately, hoping for an explanation. But she'd dismissed me with a wave. "It changes nothing," she'd said. "You're still a Warren in name." But it changed everything. It explained why they'd always favored Lila, why they'd poured their love into her while I got scraps. Back in the dining room, I forced myself to sit through the rest of the meal, my mind racing. I couldn't keep living like this, a ghost in my own family. But what could I do? Expose the secret. Walk away. The idea of leaving was terrifying. I'd lose the only family I'd ever known, flawed as they were. Yet staying meant accepting their verdict, that I was a disgrace, unworthy of their love. As dessert was served, Lila reached for my hand under the table, her touch hesitant. "Ellie, I'm sorry," she whispered. Her eyes held genuine pain. And for a moment, I saw the sister I used to know, the one who'd sneak into my room at night to share secrets. But she was part of their world now, their chosen heir. I pulled my hand away, my heart hardening. I needed answers, not pity. That night, I lay awake in my old bedroom, the mansion's silence suffocating. I decided then I'd uncover the truth about my origins, no matter the cost. If I wasn't a Warren, who was I? And why had they kept me, only to treat me like a stain on their legacy? The answers were out there, and I'd find them even if it meant tearing apart the only family I'd ever known. The next morning, I woke with a fire in my chest, the kind that burns away doubt and leaves only purpose. I couldn't stay in this house, surrounded by lies polished to look like love. I packed a small bag, slipped out before dawn, and drove to my apartment in the city. The skyline of Chicago, a jagged reminder of the empire I'd never inherit. My apartment was a stark contrast to the Warren mansion, cramped, cluttered with art books and half-finished sketches. But mine. I sat at my desk. The letter from the private investigator spread before me like a map to a war zone. It was sparse, clinical, detailing only that my biological father was unknown and my mother, my real mother, had died shortly after my birth. The Warrens had adopted me, but the why was a blank space. I needed more. I needed the truth. I started with the investigator's name on the letter, Harold Grayson, a private eye based in Chicago. A quick search online revealed he'd retired years ago, but his agency still operated downtown. I called, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach, and made an appointment with his son, Michael, who'd taken over the business. If anyone could dig into my past, it was them. The agency was in a nondescript building, its faded sign a relic of another era. Michael Grayson was in his late 30s, with sharp eyes and a handshake that felt like a contract. "You're Eleanor Warren," he said, glancing at my ID. "What's this about?" I handed him the letter, watching his expression shift from curiosity to something unreadable. "This is old," he said. "My father's work. Why do you want to dig this up?" "Because it's my life," I said, my voice cracking. "I need to know who I am." He nodded, promising to look into it. "But warn me, old secrets like this, they don't come up clean." I didn't care, clean or not. I wanted the truth. While Michael worked, I returned to the gallery where I worked part-time. It was a small space, filled with local artists' work, a world away from my parents' sterile mansions. My boss, Clara, noticed my distraction. "You okay, Ellie?" she asked, her voice warm. I wanted to tell her everything, but the words stuck. Instead, I threw myself into curating a new exhibit, hoping the rhythm of work would dull the ache. Days passed, each one heavier than the last. I avoided my parents' calls, their voicemails a mix of irritation and feigned concern. Lila texted, her messages tentative, "Can we talk? I miss you." I didn't reply. I wasn't ready to face her, not when she was the living proof of everything I'd never be to them. Then Michael called. "I found something," he said, his voice low. "Meet me tomorrow." My heart raced as I agreed, barely sleeping that night. The next day, he handed me a thin file, his face grim. "Your adoption wasn't straightforward," he said. "Your biological mother, Anna Reed, was a maid in the Warren household. She died in a car accident when you were 3 months old. No father listed. But here's the kicker. The Warrens didn't adopt you legally. There's no record of it." I stared at him, The words not sinking in. What do you mean? No record. He sighed. They took you in, raised you as theirs. But there's no adoption paperwork. It's like they erased her. My mind spun. Anna Reed. My mother. A maid. The pieces were jagged, cutting into everything I thought I knew. Why would they take me in, only to treat me like an outsider? Was it guilt? Control? Something worse? I drove to the lakefront, needing air, needing space. The water stretched endless before me, its surface calm despite the storm inside. Anna Reed. I whispered her name, trying to conjure a face, a voice, anything. But there was nothing, just a void where my history should have been. I thought of my parents, their cold dismissal, their obsession with Lila. Had they kept me to hide their shame, to bury their secrets? I needed to confront them, but not yet. I needed more proof. Leverage. Something to make them face what they'd done. Michael had mentioned a former colleague of Anna's, a woman named Margaret who still lived in Chicago. She'd worked with Anna at the Warren estate. If anyone knew the truth, it was her. I tracked Margaret down to a small house in a quiet suburb. She was in her 70s. Her hands gnarled, but her eyes sharp. When I mentioned Anna, her face softened. She was a good girl, Margaret said, inviting me in. Too good for that house. Over tea, she told me about Anna, kind, hardworking, but always sad. She loved you, Margaret said. She'd sing to you when the Warrens weren't around. But they didn't like it. Your mother, she wasn't just a maid to them. She was a problem. A problem. I pressed. Margaret hesitated, then leaned closer. Anna was involved with someone in that family. I don't know who, but it wasn't right. When she got pregnant, they made sure she stayed quiet. Then she was gone. Her words hit like a fist. Involved with someone. My father. An uncle. The possibilities made my skin crawl. I left Margaret's house with more questions than answers. But one thing was clear. The Warrens had built their perfect family on a foundation of lies. And I was going to tear it down. The drive back to my apartment felt like a descent into a fog I couldn't shake. Margaret's words echoed. Anna was involved with someone in that family. Someone in the Warren household had been part of my mother's life and mine before they erased her. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, as Chicago's lights blurred past. The truth was close, but it felt like reaching for a knife in the dark. I called Michael the next morning, my voice raw from sleeplessness. Dig deeper, I said. I need to know who Anna was involved with. He hesitated, then agreed, warning me again about the mess I was wading into. This isn't just about you anymore, he said. If there's a scandal, it could ruin the Warrens. Good, I thought. Let it burn. Work at the gallery became my refuge. The only place where I could breathe without the weight of my family's lies. Clara noticed my intensity, the way I threw myself into organizing the exhibit. You're different, she said one afternoon, her eyes searching mine. What's going on? I almost told her, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I smiled and said, just family drama. She didn't push, but her concern lingered. A quiet reminder that someone saw me, even if my parents didn't. Lila's texts kept coming, each one a plea. Ellie, please talk to me. I don't know what I did. I wanted to believe her, to think she wasn't part of their game. But doubt gnawed at me. Did she know about Anna? About me? I couldn't face her until I had answers. So I let her messages pile up, unanswered. A week later, Michael called with a breakthrough. I found a journal, he said. Anna kept one, hidden in the Warrens' estate. A groundskeeper found it years ago and kept it, thinking it might matter someday. He's willing to meet. My heart pounded. A journal. Anna's words. Her truth. I arranged to meet the groundskeeper, a man named Tom, at a coffee shop in the suburbs. Tom was grizzled, his hands stained from years of work. He slid a worn leather notebook across the table, its pages yellowed but intact. Anna was a sweet girl, he said, his voice rough. Didn't deserve what they did to her. I thanked him, my hands trembling as I took the journal. Back in my apartment, I opened it, my breath catching at the sight of her handwriting slanted, delicate, like a piece of her still lived. The journal was a window into Anna's world. She wrote about her days as a maid, the Warrens' cold formality, the loneliness of her life. But then the entry shifted, her words tinged with hope and fear. He says he loves me, but I know it's wrong. He's married. I can't tell anyone. My stomach churned. She didn't name him, but the clues were there. He's older, powerful, part of this house. My father, my Uncle Richard, who died years ago. The possibilities made me sick. One entry stopped me cold. I'm pregnant. He says he'll take care of it, but I don't trust him. I want to keep my baby. Tears blurred my vision. Anna had wanted me, loved me, even when the world told her she couldn't. The final entries were frantic. Written days before her death, they know. They're watching me. I'm scared. The journal ended abruptly, the last page torn. I sat there, the journal in my lap, my chest tight. Anna hadn't just died in an accident, she'd been afraid. Cornered. Had the Warrens done something to her? The thought was too heavy, too dark, but I couldn't dismiss it. I called Michael, my voice shaking. I need to know how she died. I said, the accident, what really happened. He promised to look into it, but his tone was grim. Ellie, be careful. If this is what it looks like, you're playing with fire. I couldn't stop now. I drove to the Warren estate, the journal tucked in my bag like a weapon. The mansion loomed, its windows dark, but I didn't care. I needed to see my parents, to demand answers. I found them in the study, my father behind his desk, my mother flipping through a magazine. They looked up, startled, as I stormed in. What happened to Anna Reed? I asked, my voice cutting through the silence. My mother's face paled, her magazine slipping to the floor. My father stood, his jaw tight. What are you talking about? He said, but his eyes betrayed him fear, guilt, something I'd never seen before. I held up the journal. She was my mother, and you did something to her. The room froze. My mother's hand flew to her throat, her diamonds glinting. Eleanor, you don't know what you're saying, she whispered. But I did. For the first time, I saw them not as my parents, but as strangers with secrets they'd kill to keep. Tell me the truth, I said, my voice steady, or I go public with this. My father's face hardened. You wouldn't dare, he said. You'd destroy everything, Lila. The foundation. Our name. I laughed, the sound bitter. Your name. It's not mine. You made sure of that. I turned to leave, the journal heavy in my hands. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The air in the Warren mansion felt toxic as I left the study, my parents' silence louder than any confession. I drove back to my apartment, the journal burning a hole in my bag. Anna's words haunted Meher fear, her love for me, her desperation. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for her, for the truth she'd been denied. Michael called the next day with more. The accident, he said, his voice tight. It wasn't clean. Anna's car went off a bridge, but the police report mentions inconsistencies, brake tampering. No witnesses. It was ruled an accident, but the case was closed fast. Too fast. My blood ran cold. Tampering. Had the Warrens gone that far to protect their secrets? I thanked Michael, my mind racing. I needed to talk to someone who'd been there, someone who knew the Warrens back then. I tracked down another former employee, a cook named Doris who'd worked alongside Anna. She was reluctant to meet, but I persuaded her with a promise of discretion. We met at a diner, its neon lights buzzing softly. Doris was in her 60s, her face lined but kind. Anna was special, she said, stirring her coffee. But she got too close to the family. To him. Him. I pressed. My heart pounding. Doris looked away, her hands trembling. Your father, she whispered. Charles Warren. He and Anna. It wasn't right. He was married, and she was so young. When she got pregnant, they panicked. Your mother Elizabeth was furious. They sent Anna away. But then the accident happened. Her voice broke. I never believed it was an accident. The diner spun around me. My father, the man who'd raised me, who'd called me a disgrace, had been in love with my mother, me real mother. And then she was gone. I thanked Doris, my voice hollow, and left, the world tilting under my feet. Back home, I reread Anna's journal, searching for confirmation. One entry stood out. C. Says he'll protect me. But I see the way E. looks at me. She hates me. C. Charles. E. Elizabeth. It was them. I didn't sleep that night. The truth was a weight I couldn't carry alone. But who could I trust? Lila. She was their daughter. Their pride. Would she even believe me? I thought of her texts. Her pleas to talk. Maybe she wasn't part of this. Maybe she was as much a victim of their lies as I was. I texted her, meet me tomorrow. We need to talk. She replied instantly, where? I'm here for you. I chose a neutral place. A park near the gallery. Away from the Warren estate. The next day, Lila was waiting on a bench. Her blonde hair catching the sunlight. She looked nervous. Her hands twisting in her lap. Ellie, what's going on? She asked as I sat down. I took a deep breath and told her everything: the letter, the journal, Anna, the accident. Her face crumpled, tears welling as I spoke. I didn't know, she whispered. I swear, I didn't know. I believed her. For the first time in years, I saw my sister, not the golden child, but the girl who'd once been my best friend. What do we do? She asked, her voice small. I didn't have an answer. Not yet. But her question gave me hope. She wasn't turning away. She was with me. We find proof, I said. Something undeniable. And then we confront them together. Lila nodded. Her jaw set. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't alone in this fight. We agreed to work with Michael, pooling our resources. Lila had access to the Warren estate, to files and records I couldn't reach. I'll look through Dad's office, she said. If there's anything, I'll find it. I felt a pang of fear for her. She was stepping into the same fire I was, but her resolve was unshakable. They've hurt you enough, she said. I won't let them keep doing it. Over the next few days, Lila searched the mansion while I worked with Michael to track down more witnesses. We found a retired police officer who'd worked Anna's case, a man named Paul who agreed to meet. He was gruff, skeptical, but when I showed him the journal, his face softened. I always thought something was off, he said. The Warrens had influence. The case was buried before we could dig deeper. He promised to share old case notes, anything that might help. Each piece of evidence was a brick in the wall. I was building a wall to shield Anna's memory and expose the Warrens' lies. But the closer I got, the more dangerous it felt. Late one night, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Stop digging, a low voice said. You don't know what you're up against. The line went dead, and I sat there, heart pounding, staring into the dark. Someone was watching. Someone was scared. I told Lila about the call, and her face paled. We can't stop, she said, her voice fierce. Not now. I nodded, but fear gnawed at me. The Warrens weren't just my parents, they were a machine. Their wealth and power a shield for their secrets. But I was their daughter, in name if not blood, and I'd learned a thing or two about fighting back. The anonymous call lingered like a shadow, but it only fueled my resolve. If the Warrens or someone protecting them thought they could scare me off, they didn't know me at all. Lila and I were in this together now. A fragile alliance built on years of shared history and a new, shared purpose to uncover the truth about Anna and hold our parents accountable. Lila's search of the Warren estate yielded results. She found a hidden safe in our father's office, tucked behind a false panel in the bookshelf. I don't have the combination, she texted, her message laced with frustration. But I saw him open it once. I think it's important. We met at the park again, her face pale but determined. I'll get in, she said. I just need time. I trusted her, but the risk weighed heavy. If our parents caught her, what would they do? Michael's investigation was moving faster. Paul, the retired officer, sent us scanned copies of the old case notes. They were damning, skid marks inconsistent with an accident, a rushed autopsy, pressure from higher-ups to close the case. One note mentioned a witness who'd seen a second car near the bridge the night Anna died. But they'd recanted their statement days later. Someone got to them, Paul said when we called. Money or threats, take your pick. I felt like I was drowning in secrets, each one pulling me deeper into a world I barely recognized. Lila and I spent hours piecing together what we knew: Anna's affair with our father, her pregnancy, her fear, the suspicious accident. But we needed Moria's smoking gun to prove the Warrens' involvement. I kept Anna's journal close, rereading her words for strength. I want to keep my baby. She'd fought for me. Now I'd fight for her. One evening, Lila called, her voice shaking. I got into the safe. She said, "There's a letter. It's bad, Ellie." She refused to say more over the phone, insisting we meet in person. I drove to her apartment, my heart in my throat. Lila handed me a sealed envelope, her hands trembling. "It's from Dad to Anna," she said, dated a week before she died. I tore it open, my eyes scanning the typed words. "Anna, you can't keep this child. It will ruin us both. Leave, and you'll be taken care of. Stay, and I can't protect you." It was signed with my father's initials. My knees buckled, and Lila caught me, her own tears falling. "He threatened her," she whispered. "Our father." The letter wasn't proof of murder, but it was proof of motive. He'd wanted Anna gone, and when she wouldn't leave, she died. We sat in silence, the letter between us like a live wire. "What now?" Lila asked, her voice small. I didn't know. Confronting our parents with this could destroy everything: their empire, our family, us. But staying silent meant letting them win, letting Anna's death remain a footnote in their perfect story. "We go public," I said finally. "But we need to be smart. We need more." Michael suggested a lawyer, someone who could help us build a case without exposing us prematurely. We met with Sarah Klein, a no-nonsense attorney with a reputation for taking on powerful families. She read the journal, the letter, the case notes, her face grim. "This is explosive," she said, "but it's not enough for a criminal case. We need corroboration, someone who saw something, or proof the Warrens paid to cover it up." Sarah's words were a gut punch, but she was right. We needed a witness, or better, financial records showing the Warrens' influence over the police or the witness who'd recanted. Lila volunteered to dig deeper into the family's accounts, using her access to the foundation's financials. "I know their systems," she said. "If they paid anyone off, I'll find it." The next few days were a blur of tension. I kept working at the gallery, but my mind was elsewhere, jumping at every phone call, every shadow. The anonymous caller didn't contact me again, but the threat hung over me, a reminder of what we were up against. Lila was taking the biggest risk, sneaking into our father's office at night, combing through files while the household slept. Then she found it, a ledger buried in the foundation's archives, detailing payments to a consulting firm that didn't exist. The dates matched Anna's death, and the amounts were staggering hundreds of thousands of dollars. "It's a shell company," Lila said, showing me the records. "They funneled money to silence people." My heart raced. This was a link we needed. We took the ledger to Sarah, who nodded slowly. "This could work," she said. "If we can trace these payments, we can prove a cover-up." She warned us it wouldn't be easy. The Warrens had lawyers, influence, connections. But for the first time, I felt hope. We weren't just fighting for justice. We were fighting for Anna's memory, for the truth they'd buried. That night, Lila and I sat in my apartment. The ledger and journal spread before us. I'm scared, she admitted, her voice barely audible. They're our parents. I took her hand, squeezing it. They stopped being our parents when they chose lies over us. I said, we're doing this for Anna. For us. She nodded, her eyes fierce with resolve. We were sisters again, bound by something stronger than blood, the truth. The ledger was our weapon, but wielding it meant going to war. Lila and I met with Sarah daily, building our case like architects of a fragile rebellion. She hired a forensic accountant to trace the payments, confirming they went to a shell company tied to a retired police official who'd worked Anna's case. It wasn't direct proof of murder, but it screamed cover-up. Sarah's eyes gleamed as she reviewed the findings. This is enough to rattle them, she said. But we need to move carefully. The Warrens don't lose quietly. I felt the weight of her words. My parents weren't just wealthy, they were ruthless. Their empire built on control. Confronting them meant risking everything: my name, my safety, my connection to the only family I'd known. But every time I wavered, I thought of Anna's journal, her fear, her love for me. I couldn't let her down. Lila was struggling, too. Her fiancé, James, had noticed her distraction, and she hadn't told him the truth. He thinks I'm stressed about the foundation, she confessed one night, her voice heavy. I don't know how to tell him our parents might be monsters. I hugged her, feeling her tremble. You don't have to do this alone, I said. We're in this together. She nodded, but I saw the fear in her eyes. She was risking her perfect life, her future, for me. Sarah suggested a public approach, a press conference to expose the ledger and Anna's story. It'll force their hand, she said. They'll have to respond. The idea terrified me. Going public meant burning bridges, not just with my parents, but with Chicago's elite, who'd close ranks around the Warrens. But silence wasn't an option. Anna deserved justice, and I deserved a life free of their lies. We spent days preparing, drafting statements, gathering evidence. Michael tracked down another witness, a former maid who'd overheard my parents arguing about Anna's pregnancy. Elizabeth wanted her gone, the maid told us, her voice shaky. She said Anna was a threat to their legacy. Each piece strengthened our case, but it also tightened the noose around my heart. These were my parents, the people who'd raised me, flawed as they were. Could I really destroy them? The night before the press conference, Lila came to my apartment, her face pale. I found something else, she said, handing me a photo. It was old, faded, showing a young Anna holding a baby. On the back, in her handwriting, my Ellie. Forever. Tears stung my eyes. This was why I was fighting, not just for truth, but for love, the kind the Warrens had never given me. We barely slept, rehearsing our words, bracing for the storm. The next morning, we stood in a small conference room, cameras flashing, reporters murmuring. Sarah introduced us, her voice steady. Today, Eleanor and Lila Warren will share a story of betrayal, loss, and a family's dark secrets. My heart pounded as I stepped to the microphone, Anna's journal in my hands. My name is Eleanor Warren, I began, my voice trembling but clear. But I'm not a Warren by blood. My mother was Anna Reed, a woman erased by the family who raised me. I told her story, her love, her fear, her death. Lila stood beside me, her hand on my arm, and spoke of the ledger, the payments, the lies. The room was silent, the air thick with shock. By the time we finished, my legs were shaking, but I felt lighter, as if I'd shed the weight of years. The reporters erupted, questions flying, but Sarah stepped in, promising more details as the investigation continued. We left the room, the world buzzing around us. And I knew nothing would ever be the same. That night, the story broke across every major outlet in Chicago. Headlines screamed, Warren family scandal, cover-up alleged in maid's death. My phone buzzed with messages friends, colleagues, strangers. Some offered support. Others called me a traitor. I ignored them all, focusing on Lila, who sat curled on my couch, her face buried in her hands. James left me, she said quietly. He said he can't handle this. My heart broke for her. But she looked up, her eyes fierce. It's worth it, she said. For you. For Anna. The Warrens didn't respond publicly, but their lawyer called, his voice cold. Retract your statements, or you'll regret it, he said. I hung up, my hands shaking. They were scared, cornered. But so was I. Sarah warned us to expect legal threats. Maybe worse. Stay vigilant, she said. They'll fight dirty. Days passed in a blur of interviews and strategy sessions. The accountant uncovered more payments, linking the Warrens to the witness who'd recanted. Public pressure mounted, and the police reopened Anna's case. I felt a flicker of hope, but it was tempered by fear. The Warrens weren't done fighting, and I knew they'd come for us. One night, I found a note slipped under my door. You can't win. No signature, no clue who'd left it. I showed it to Lila, who clutched my hand. We're stronger than they think, she said. And she was right. Together, we were unstoppable not because of wealth or power, but because we had each other. And the truth. The note under my door was a warning, but it only steeled my resolve. Lila and I were too far in to turn back. The world was watching now, and the Warrens' empire was cracking under the weight of their secrets. Chicago's elite whispered behind closed doors, their loyalty to my parents fraying as the headlines piled up. But I knew the real battle was still ahead. Me parents wouldn't go down without a fight. Sarah called a meeting to plan our next move. The reopened police investigation was gaining traction, with new witnesses coming forward. One, a mechanic who'd worked on Anna's car, claimed he'd been paid to stay quiet about the brake tampering. His testimony was a breakthrough. But Sarah warned us, the Warrens will counterattack. Expect character assassination, lawsuits, anything to discredit you. I nodded, my stomach tight. I'd been called a disgrace before. This was just a louder version. Lila was quieter now, the loss of James weighing on her. But she was fierce, diving into the Foundation's records with renewed focus. She found emails between our father and a fixer, discussing the Anna problem weeks before her death. The language was coded but damning. Handle it discreetly. No traces. Lila's hands shook as she showed me. This is who they are, she said, her voice breaking. How did we not see it? We handed the emails to Sarah, who sent them to the police. The investigation was moving faster now, but so was the Warrens' retaliation. A smear campaign began, articles questioning my mental stability, calling me a bitter daughter out for revenge. Lila wasn't spared. Her engagement's collapse was splashed across tabloids, painting her as unstable. They're trying to break us, I told her one night, as we sat in my apartment, the city's lights flickering outside. She nodded, her jaw tight. They won't. The breaking point came when my father called. I hadn't spoken to him since the press conference, but his voice was calm, almost gentle. Eleanor, let's talk, he said. Come to the house. Bring Lila. I hesitated, sensing a trap, but Lila insisted. We faced them together, she said. No more running. Against Sarah's advice, we went, armed with the truth and each other. The mansion felt colder than ever, its grandeur a hollow shell. My parents sat in the living room, their faces masks of composure. You've caused quite a mess, my mother said, her voice like ice. My father leaned forward, his eyes on me. What do you want? Eleanor. Money. Forgiveness. We can make this go away. I laughed. The sound sharp. You think this is about money. It's about Anna. My mother. What did you do to her? The room went still. My mother's face twitched. But my father spoke. His voice low. Anna was a mistake. A moment of weakness. We gave you a life. A name. Isn't that enough? I stared at him. The man who'd raised me. Who'd loved my mother and let her die. You killed her. I said. The words spilling out. You covered it up. He didn't flinch. But his silence was an answer. Lila stepped forward. Her voice steady. We have proof. She said. The ledger. The emails. The witnesses. It's over. My mother's eyes widened. And for the first time, I saw fear. You'd destroy us. She whispered. After everything we've given you. I met her gaze. You gave me lies. I'm taking the truth. We left. The door closing behind us like a gunshot. The next day, the police arrested my father on charges of conspiracy and evidence tampering. My mother wasn't charged yet, but the investigation was closing in. The Warren name, once untouchable, was crumbling. The foundation lost donors. Their social circle shrank. And the mansion became a prison of their own making. Lila and I moved forward. Together. She left the foundation, choosing a quieter life, rebuilding herself away from our parents' shadow. I kept working at the gallery, finding peace in the art that had always been my refuge. Anna's journal stayed with me, a reminder of the mother I'd never known but whose love I carried. The trial was months away, but the truth was out, and that was enough for now. I visited Anna's grave, a small stone in a quiet cemetery, and left a sketch I'd drawn of her, based on the photo Lila found. I'm sorry, I whispered, but we did it. For you. The wind carried my words, and for the first time, I felt whole. Not a Warren, not a disgrace, but Ellie, Anna's daughter. Lila and I stood together at the cemetery, our hands clasped. We'd lost a family but found each other, and that was worth everything. The Warrens' legacy was in ashes, but ours was just Beganinga legacy of truth, of love, of fighting for what was right. And as the sun set, painting the sky in hues of gold, I knew Anna was with us, her spirit finally free.